Before the Grammys, global tours, and the millions of fans, there was a prison cell in England where Burna Boy spent almost a year of his life. It was a chapter buried beneath several hit records, rarely spoken about, and for years barely acknowledged. That prison was Chelmsford HMP, nearly 200 years old and known for holding some of the most dangerous inmates in the UK. And yet, this is where one of Africa's greatest musical exports spent part of his early life. But the question is, how did he get here? Let's rewind back to the beginning.
People act like they've died but never died it. I keep on smoking cause I ain't it. Them a flex muscle and a flexing bicep, but them violate and them brain a dissect. So my mind...
On the 2nd of July 1991, Burna Boy was born as Damini Ebenoluwa Ogulu in Port Harcourt, Nigeria. He grew up surrounded by music. His grandfather, Benson Ideniji, had been the manager of the legendary Fela Kuti, and the family home was stacked with Fela records, jazz records, and some of the most iconic music ever pressed. That environment pulled the young Damini into a world of sound far beyond his years. His earliest influences, though, were not African. Growing up, he gravitated toward American artists like DMX and Big Pun. And it was only later, in his own words, that he began to find himself as an African man from Africa. After finishing secondary school in Nigeria, he was sent to the United Kingdom, and it was there that the real trouble began. London in the early 2000s was a different kind of city, gritty, dangerous, and unforgiving. Youth violence was high, especially in the less privileged areas. Groups of teenagers were receiving combined prison sentences of 77 years for stabbings at train stations. For young people in those environments, the choices were narrow: blend in or find a way to defend yourself. Now consider what that world looked like for a Nigerian teenager fresh off a plane. A thick accent, different clothes and mannerisms. Of course he stood out immediately, and standing out in those streets was dangerous. There was even a name for people like him, fresh off the boat, and it was not a term of endearment. He was mocked for the way he spoke, the way he dressed, and the way he carried himself. You see, Burna Boy has spoken about this period with striking honesty. He admitted that at the time, he was not proud to be Nigerian, that it simply wasn't something people celebrated where he was, and that the constant ridicule made him want to distance himself from his own identity. He spent much of his time in Brixton. Back then, Brixton was not just a postcode, it was one of the most culturally layered and volatile areas in the country.
I considered myself like more Jamaican at the time, because simply for the fact that everyone around me was Jamaican and Caribbean and stuff, and it was minimal Nigerians around me at the time, you know. So obviously when I go back home to Nigeria, then I'm really in Nigeria. But when I was here, it was really most, and even the Africans that was my dogs, like for real, they were really Nigerian, Gambian, there was Ugandan, there was Congolese, like you get me, like you get me. So my crew of people, it was only like 2 Nigerians.
But despite all of that, they had built something vibrant, a community rich in music, food, resistance, and spirit. Reggae, dub, and eventually grime all found their foundations there. That energy would go on to shape Burna's identity and style. He immersed himself in the Caribbean culture around him to the point where he considered himself more Jamaican than Nigerian at the time, because nearly everyone around him was Jamaican or Caribbean, and Nigerians were few. It was where he felt he belonged, even when belonging came at a price. He was enrolled at the University of Sussex to study media technology, but he didn't stay. Then he moved to Oxford Brookes University. He didn't stay there either, because something kept pulling him away from the lecture halls. Whether it was Brixton, the streets, or a life he was quietly living outside of academia, something went badly wrong, and then came Chelmsford Prison. On the 7th of September 2022, Burna Boy posted a tweet that read, "I came into the music industry straight from Chelmsford HMP. I had no idea that I would even live this long. So when people talk about me now, it's all just funny."
It was a weird, dark time, you know. It's a time I don't really talk about. I feel like we all have these times. There was a time where I didn't even care about none of that. I wasn't thinking about any of that.
The most persistent rumor about this chapter surfaced in December 2013, when a Nigerian entertainment blog published a report claiming that Burna Boy had been involved in a stabbing incident in London in which a man was killed. The report alleged he was tried as a minor and served 11 months in prison. It also alleged that he was released early on good behavior and was given community service as a condition of his parole. However, he reportedly abandoned these conditions when he flew back to Nigeria to start over. Burna denied the allegation, particularly the part involving someone being killed. In an interview, he acknowledged that he had lived in the UK for several years and that he did what he felt he had to do at the time, adding that the full story was not what the bloggers had reported. What he never denied was Chelmsford, and in the same interview, he gave the clearest explanation he has ever offered for what followed. He tried to return to the UK for a show, but his visa was refused because he left the country when he was not supposed to leave. That is as close to a confession as he has ever come. In other words, he admitted in a way that he had some obligation in Britain when he walked away from it. After returning to Nigeria, he settled back in Port Harcourt. A friend called Too Sleek introduced him to a young producer named Larry Q, and that meeting would become one of the most significant of his career. The first song they recorded together was called Freedom, which was perfect, given what Burna had just come through. They recorded it in a studio tucked inside a treehouse in the pipeline area of Port Harcourt. Not exactly a comfortable environment, but it was where something real began. Together they built his debut album, Life, released under Aristocrat Records. The record caught fire almost immediately. Tracks like Run My Race, Yawa Day, and Like to Party announced a new voice in Nigerian music, and the country listened. But even as his career began to take shape, conflict continued to follow him. He fell out with Aristocrat Records over money and creative control, departing bitterly. He had public disagreements with Larry Q over credit for the music they had made together. And most strikingly, he parted ways with his own mother, Bose Ogulu, who had been serving as his manager. He said simply that he does what is best for his career and that he is someone who does whatever he has to do to move forward. Bridge after bridge burned, and yet, through all of it, he moved with an almost irrational level of self-belief. He began weaving Fela Kuti's spirit directly into his image, performing at the Fela Shrine in Port Harcourt with a rawness that was clearly paying homage to the legend. Fela's family were not pleased, but Burna Boy was finding his identity, and nobody was going to define it for him. He spent time in South Africa, collaborating with artists there. One of those collaborations, All Eyes on Me, with South African rapper AKA and his label mates, is widely considered one of the finest African music collaborations of the Afrobeats era. He was growing, but there was a ceiling, and he could feel it pressing down. His peers Wizkid and Davido were already breaking into UK markets, performing across Europe and the United States. And Burna Boy, whose talent nobody seriously questioned, seemed unable to cross the same threshold. The reason many pointed to was the UK. He denied the visa ban, but the gap in his touring history spoke a quiet truth. For 7 years, he did not perform in Britain.
7 years, eh? It's telling me you ain't been here for 7 years.
7 years, yeah.
Why'd you disappear for 7 years, eh?
I don't know. Well, we've got you now, Burna. You won't be doing nothing for another 7 years.
And 2016 arrived and changed everything.
London, are you ready? If you want me to come out there tonight and shut it down, let me hear you say burn up. Say burn up.
When he arrived, the city shut down. The love was overwhelming. And for him, this was not just a tour. It was, by name and by nature, redemption. What followed was one of the most remarkable transformations in modern music. His 2018 album Outside gained unexpected international attention, partly through a coincidence of timing his track he shared its title with a Kanye West album released the same year, and fans searching for one stumbled onto the other. Then came African Giant, then Twice as Tall, and with it, his first Grammy. But controversy never stopped following him. In 2017, Nigerian police named him as an alleged mastermind in a robbery and assault on fellow artist Mr. Tuki. He eventually turned himself in. There were incidents at concerts when fans who ran onto his stage were kicked by the artist. Burna Boy attributed his reactions in moments like these to PTSD. And when you consider what he has carried, it is not difficult to understand what untreated trauma looks like when it finally surfaces, even if understanding it does not excuse it. Today, Damini Agulu is a global icon. Rolling Stone named him one of the 200 greatest singers of all time. He became the first African artist to headline a stadium in the UK, bringing 60,000 people to London Stadium. And yet the one thing he has never done is say the word. He described the courtroom in a song on his 2025 album, No Sign of Weakness, where he spoke of a judge and prosecutors pushing for 70 years. But the charge itself, that single detail which would close the story, has remained locked away for 15 years.